Welcome to Soni Irabor Live. Well, today I have a very special guest in the studio with me. My studio is now at his house, and we're going to discuss issues that will relate to how we were, how we are today, and where we're likely to be in the future. Well, you see, a country like Nigeria cannot do without its past. And incidentally, our history seems to have been, compromised, mortgaged. I don't know why, and I don't even want to know why. All I do know is that there are people who are custodians of our history from their personal experiences. And I have a man I would like to refer to as Chief or Mr. Dele Adetiba, a broadcaster, an advertiser, and a sportsman too, and a tall, handsome 80-year-old. Welcome. Hello, sir. Should I let me shake your hands?
Thank you.
That's a good grip. So, let us look at the past before we come into the present. What was it like for you in broadcasting?
What was it like in broadcasting in those days? It was a family.
Many would not believe that you were in broadcasting. That's why I asked that question the way I did.
It was a family.
Yeah.
I was lucky to start with, to have worked with probably the first, definitely the second generation of Nigerians who were in broadcasting. And so one had many mentors to look up to and to follow. And they took you under their wings. Even though in broadcasting terms, we called each other first name and stuff, but we knew who was who. And they were very generous with their time. And they made you feel welcome. You walked into Ikoyi, the broadcasting house in those days, it was like a sepulcher of broadcasting in this country. So you had a certain level of awe, but they calmed you down and you were able to be a part of it.
Now, if you look at how that has been, I went to a broadcasting house, the same Ikoyi you just mentioned, a few weeks ago. I wept. I don't know when last you were there. And the reason I brought this up is because of the way you spoke with such nostalgia about it. It's a ghost town. It's not like it used to be. And when you were there, you said it was a beehive. I'm using my own phrase now. What do you think would have happened to the point that we lost our glory?
Well, many things really. First of all, at the time I was there, the time we was talking about now, Broadcasting House Ikoyi was the headquarters of broadcasting nationally for what was then the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation. NBC, Radio Nigeria, and then FRCN and all that. And at the time, it was the only national station which you could pick up almost every other part of Nigeria. At the time, there were probably 3 or 4 other stations in the entire country. You had WMBS in Ibadan, you had EMBS in the east, you had RKTV and stuff in the north. And that was it. So there was a special place for Broadcasting House Ikoyi at that time. I think the decline started when Abuja became the headquarters, because Abuja is also the national capital. So all activities shifted to Abuja. And the old broadcasting house, as you said, is something of a ghost house now, which is probably appropriate since it's always been situated near the burial ground anyway.
Very apt, if you want to say, because what you just brought to my mind now is when at midnight you finish your broadcast assignment, you're going back home, and you have to pass through that cemetery.
Yes.
So Valente to get a transport to get back. Oh my goodness. Those statues used to be like angels or ghosts, I don't know. However, when we look at you as Dele Adetiba, many of us remember you from sports, then later advertising. I have to take you back in time to broadcasting. Who were your mates in the broadcasting sector those days?
Oh, Kevin Ejiofor. Although he came from the East eventually.
Yeah.
When I came in, already in place at the time, Mike Nahuru was a couple of years ahead of me.
Okay.
In the place, and on radio, Friday 4-day. And then we had Churchill. If
Blessed memory now.
Yes. And Stella Awani.
My trainer.
Again, she was a couple of years ahead of me.
Okay.
But those were the people I practiced with at the time. And then,
when did you leave broadcasting for advertising?
Yes, I left.
Because I didn't meet you in broadcasting, although you were coming back.
Once a broadcaster, I suppose, always. Yeah. I left broadcasting fully as a member of staff in 1973.
Ooh.
Immediately after the All Africa Games. But you're right, I still came back to do stuff. I still had sports programs to do on a weekly basis. And on television, I still did a 1-hour show every Saturday for probably another 3-4 years after I left.
Ooh.
So for people who didn't know, who were not part of the system, they didn't even realize I left.
On TV, what was that 1-hour program you were presenting?
Sports.
Sports, okay.
Yes.
Right.
Saturday sports.
Yeah. So why did you leave broadcasting, since you had all your hands filled up?
I didn't plan to leave broadcasting. And I was lucky also, as I said earlier on, I met the first generation of broadcasters, and with time, other people were coming, so I was like a bridge. My generation was like a bridge to the younger ones. So I was having fun. In my department, which are the outside broadcast, which is sports, the Baba himself, the real patriarch of that department, Ishala Follow on the show.
Okay. Elias is a goal.
Yes,
Okay.
I had been pushed upstairs. He was controller of programs. After him was Yemi Fadipe,
Yes.
who left on a study leave. And then there was a cousin, nobody. So I was moved from television to radio because at the time, both services were under the same corporation.
Under Christopher Kolade, I guess? Or who was it?
Christopher Kolade, I left Christopher Kolade, I think, in Television House.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Later on, he came as director of programs on radio.
Okay.
When I came, the director general was Reverend Badijo.
Victor Badijo.
Victor Badijo.
That's right, yes.
So there was that bridge that generation formed. Therefore, I was the only person in outside broadcast. In other words, if there was a broadcast to be had in this country for
Dele
sports,
Adetiba had to be there.
I had to be there. And it didn't matter whether it was Nenugu or Ibadan or Kaduna, which was how I met many people who became my friends thereafter. People like Kevin, I met them first, Ron, Nwura Asika. I met them in the East.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And in the West, Fabio Olanipeku.
Olanipeku, yes.
He was on WMBS then,
Mm-hmm.
on WNTV, not NBC. But because he was also in sports, we met socially. Whenever I arrived at any city, if there was a broadcast in Liberty Stadium, I would go to the NBC studio in that city to set up the engineering facilities to be able to get my broadcast over to Lagos, where it will be broadcast around the country. So my first port of call anytime I arrived was I would go to the NBC in that capital of the region, and then talk to the engineering people, which brought me closer to everybody in that area of the business. So I knew people in NBC around the country at the time.
You know, I look
So
at
I had fun. I wasn't looking to
I was
run
going to
off.
ask that question. How did you really feel moving from point A to B all over the place, and you didn't feel that you were missing home and none of that?
It was
Obviously,
fun.
we were not married then.
No, as a matter of fact, even when I got married, I think within a week, I had to
You were
go.
out of
I had to go to Congo Brazzaville.
Oh,
Yes, because we had a match there. I think it was an Africa Nations thing or something, and I had to go and cover it. And in preparation for the All Africa Games as well. Yeah, within the week, I think, of my getting married, I had to be there. And that's another story itself. We got into the stadium. We had beaten them on the first leg in Lagos. And somehow, to explain why they were beaten, they had carried stories about how nasty Nigerians were to them. So they were waiting for us.
and there you were,
And there we were.
commentator.
And
The
then,
man who announced the goal anyway.
and so that's another experience. We had to be evacuated from the cauldron of the stadium. I came out in army tank.
Whoa.
And I mean tank. You
So
entered the whole of the tank, and the tank drove you out, and you could hear stones clattering
Wow.
on the.
You were that close.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Have you ever thought of writing a book on things like this? Because this is an experience, actually.
People have always teased me because for some reason, this thing stay in my mind more than how many goals were scored.
Now, how did you now get involved in advertising?
Yes. Somewhere along the line, one of my friends, I'm sure you wouldn't mind my mentioning his name, Marco Viagilik,
Okay.
came over to me once and said, I got a form for you to fill for Lintas. And I said, why? Why do I want to fill any form? I said, think about it. Now, don't forget, there was some kind of a nexus, whether it was accidental, I wouldn't know, that people in broadcasting at that time had moved, some people had moved to advertising. Femi Williams, now Chief Femi Adini Williams,
Yeah.
had left television to go to OBM. Now Chief Olufalomo
Okay.
had left broadcasting to go to Lintas. Kendi Adeosun
Yes.
had also left broadcasting.
Promo serve those days.
Yes, and before then it was OBM. So there were people ahead of me, so it wasn't so strange. It's just that I never thought about it. I was too busy having fun. In the outside broadcast department, I was the only one, which means I was like the head of department as well. even though I was head over myself. But what it meant was that I was in total control of my time.
You were the only one.
Yes.
You were you were in charge of yourself, as you said.
Absolutely.
And there was no assistant.
Nope.
Nope. And it was a whole department.
And a whole department. And not only, and I was in fact being pulled to do other things. I mean, I remember once they got me to present a music program, a regular music program.
I mean, you were very versatile.
Breakfast Fiesta.
Right.
At that time. At some programs meeting, because I was head of department, I was invited to be part of program planning.
Yeah, there used to be program planning.
Yes,
that's
and you
right.
had people from various parts of the country, old, much older people who had been in the business, that you only knew their names. You didn't quite meet them from the regions. Everybody came around, and I'd made some suggestion about a youth program and stuff, and I think Dr. Kolade was then in charge, and he said, "Okay, what shall we call this thing?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe in crowd."
Oh,
so say yes. That's good.
You created in crowd.
Yes.
Better make the way for the young folks, something like that.
And he said, in that case, you present it. That program was totally under Christopher Yeshuku.
Yes.
Nothing to do with my department. But so the first set of, the first 2 quarters or thereabout of In Crowd, I produced.
That was before Sam Ifiagu took over.
Before Sam Ifiagu came over. And then one of my early people then that brought in was Bongo Zikwe.
Yeah.
He was just in, he just arrived from, I think ABU was doing architecture or something, which he left and came over. So it was one of my first guests and regular to give me jingles and things and music at the background. And I think I also was one of the first to put this guy on radio then, John Chukwu.
To me, he was my mentor and fantastic MC those days.
Fantastic in many areas, In fact, as an aside, one of my broadcasts, and one of many of my friends used to tease me about it. In the heat of football broadcast, you remember Christian Chukwu?
Yes.
Who was the captain of the national side.
Right.
And I was going, now the ball has been moved over to John Chukwu.
Instead of Christian Chukwu.
My wires crossed that John Chukwu instead of Christian Chukwu. Many of my friends will let me forget it.
Oh my goodness. Well, there was so much extemporaneous, demand of speech, talking from the head, making sure that everything works and all of that. Anyway, my producer said I should just go on a short break. When we get back, we'll go into advertising in the true sense of the word. And then, of course, we'll look at the same man and his connection with sports, even after he was in advertising. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Yeah, well, I must say that he's taking us back in time, and he's brought us to the level where you feel the picture as he talks about them. Right. Now, Dele Adetiba, broadcaster. Dele Adetiba, sports commentator. Dele Adetiba, the advertiser or the advertising guru, as we used to say, and many more. So, sir, we'll go into advertising and come back to broadcasting, back and forth. Yeah, how did you? Yes, you were talking about how you got involved in advertising.
Yes.
You mentioned the mark of Yageleye.
So I filled the form, and the form was like 8 pages.
Oh.
I mean, intimidating already. The form was even blue. What are you guys trying to do? I filled the form. I was invited for an interview. Eventually, they said I could join. And then I didn't even know what the result was. I was driving around. It was still around the period of the All Africa Games in Lagos. And I mean, for sports, I was all over the place, you know. There's several events at the same time. And I was driving home late one afternoon, and somebody was stopping me around the Costain roundabout. And I pulled, of course it was my dear friend Mark, and he shoved the letter on my nose. Take it, Joe. In which I was accepted to join Lintas.
Ooh.
So now I had to decide, do I want to do it? Is this something I want to do? Don't forget, broadcasting had become my comfort zone. In 5 short years, I'd made a name in broadcasting. I'd almost single-handedly been the voice of the nation for that period. Before I left, a few other people joined me. Yinka Craig, Kevin Ejiofor, Sebastian Ofurum, Ernest Okonkwo.
Ernest, Elias is a good.
Quite a few of them joined me
mathematical of them.
before I left. But for a period, I was the only person. So I wasn't sure whether it was something I had to do. Again, there was a stability of employment. It was government. I'm now going to the private sector for the first time in my life.
I like the phrase stability of employment.
Yes. And
very rare these
so
days.
I had to think about it. I had to really think about it. And of course, again, my friend was always in my ear. When are you coming? Eventually, I decided to go. And luckily, there were enough familiar faces when I moved in. Marco was in Lintas. Shegun Gubumi, who also had a stint in broadcasting radio, was there. And of course, Olufaloma was my boss. You know, so getting integrated wasn't too difficult.
And when you got in there, as a copywriter or as what?
Oh, I was always employed as a client service person.
Client service.
Client service
Okay.
person.
Okay. Because you did a lot of voicing of advertising issues and materials.
Yes.
That's where our paths crossed. That's where I'm trying to push into. How did you, they always found your voice necessary or needed for those messages?
Don't forget, I'd been voicing commercials even before I joined advertising for my broadcast days.
Okay.
So people knew I could do some of those things even before I came. And my story was about the same, even in broadcasting. I did sports on a freelance basis reporting for radio because actually I was employed by TV. But when they had this thing, gap on radio, they then knew he could do it. He's been around.
But were you paid extra for it?
No. No, when I was on
TV,
Oh, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
radio.
No,
You had a salary.
When I was freelance.
Okay.
When I was freelance,
Okay.
I was paid. But
Okay.
after I joined, no, I wasn't paid anything. I mean, I would.
I had so much more work, but no pay.
Oh yes, I would do sports, man my office in sports and radio, read the news on radio, and then go in the evening to read the news on TV.
No extra.
No.
I had my reason for asking that question because advertising, those voices and those messages you voiced, some of us were on radio that time, and so we used to be called to go and do some voiceovers. That was that.
Yes.
Was called. And I have an experience I want to share with you. I know you remember it. I would like to call, I don't know if they still exist, Vitafoam.
Yes, still there, I think. Yes.
Because you and I did the voiceovers. You were the lead voice, and I think mine was to announce the Vitafoam, the best foam in foam, best name in foam, or something like that. And I kept hearing that advert so many years thereafter. And I said to myself, when are they going to pay me this? So I'm asking you now, sir, were you ever paid for those jobs beyond just the extra, the voiceover that you did?
No, no.
So all the points of payments, repetitions on radio and TV, never paid.
No.
Same here.
Back in the day, advertising made a point of paying you
once,
and you signed a copyright release.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was so comprehensive that once you signed it, they could use that voice on anything.
For as long as they wanted.
For as long as they
Anywhere.
want. They could use it as part of radio or jingle or TV. If a picture was involved, they could use it on outdoor. They could do anything.
How come
with it?
Talents were never protected along that line?
It was rudimentary to some extent at the time. As time went on, things developed, and people copyright things became an issue. You could get sued. You could get you could have to pay a lot of money thereafter, and so things changed. It's like you talked about being MC. Back in the day,
you did it for fun.
Yeah, it was like I'll come down from reading the news or whatever it is, and the phone will go in the room, and somebody would say, "You have a phone call," and I picked up. He said that one of my guys is saying, "How did you call that word?" And of course, he was constantly being monitored in those days. Mm-hmm. Those guys was serious. Or somebody who says, "Mr. Adetiba, I don't know if you help us. We have this event on next week. Please come and anchor for us." Not a penny. So years after, when I heard that you guys were earning $500,000 for I never got paid a penny for anchoring shows and things back in the day.
Now, in advertising, you became the MD. And that also meant there was a development, evolution of policies and issues that related to copyright, like you're talking about. How did it become, why was it so attractive for you in the advertising business?
Basically, advertising is also a creative business.
Yeah.
And as broadcasting was. So really, there was some transfer of experience for me going into advertising. And it further allowed me to exercise my creativity. Mm-hmm. Even though I was not an artist, I was not even a copywriter, but I got to evaluate what the copywriter did, what the artist did. And
as a decision maker?
Yeah.
Okay.
even as a young manager, as a client service person.
Okay.
To start with, you brief them what you want, and based on your brief, they come up with such suggestions, and then you get to evaluate. Because what's advertising really? Advertising is to solve a problem with the public, with the buying public of any product. So there must be something you're trying to say.
In essence, you were representing the advertiser's
Yes.
interests.
Yes, you have a meeting with the advertiser, with the client, with the manufacturers, and then you come back to your agency and discuss with the operatives. This is what I heard from my clients, and this is what I think will be the solution to their problem. In classic marketing, nobody calls you to say, please advertise for me. It means nothing. You have to tell me what your problem is.
Okay.
It's either you have too much stock in which you're trying to move it, in which case you're probably thinking of maybe promotions and things to do that. Or people are not using your product the way you want them to use it, or there's some attribute of that product which you want to sell to people. So I'm armed with that, and then we find a creative way to get that message over. And it's all about communication. And it's a very creative business. You also have to communicate to people in the language that they understand.
Okay, let me bring government into this matter now. The same way, many people felt that government ought to have some kind of, creative way of winning the people's interests for them. In effect, whatever any government person says, the ordinary man on the street will accept. But with the advertising industry, that should have helped in packaging the government in such a way that the public will accept them. Did you see yourself doing that? Did such thoughts cross your mind individually and collectively, industry-wise?
No. For a start, I worked for Lintas. At the time, Lintas was not only the first agency in the country, it was the biggest agency. So we didn't even have time for government. By and large. But secondly, even as an individual, there was a catch which would have made it more difficult. What people don't realize is your advertising is just as good as your product.
Say that again.
Your advertising is just as effective as your product is.
Meaning,
if your product is bad, there's no amount of advertising or packaging that's going to help you. Advertising, the typical marketing mix, advertising is just part of the marketing mix. You have advertising, you have display, you have distribution of the product itself, you have the product itself and pricing of the product. In other words, every single one of these 5 things can affect how the product
is perceived or received.
Yes.
Wow.
If I'm selling a packet of detergent and I'm selling it at 10,000 naira, say, even if I want it, I can't buy it because you have priced it. So price is important for the success of a product. If I want to buy this thing, the price is right, the product is good, but I can't find it. So you have a problem with your distribution. If that is failing your product fails.
Yeah.
So every little thing in the marketing mix will affect how the product does. But the number one thing is the product itself.
Okay.
We had a product many years back called Meatex in this country. It was a synthetic product which simulated meat. It was supposed to, because meat was expensive for most people.
Yeah.
So the thinking behind it was that this would be cheap and many more people can buy it and feel the pleasure of meat. And it was supported with heavy advertising before, during, and a bit after. On outdoor TV, the works. But it failed because the product tasted like rubber. So it doesn't matter how well the advertising is. If the product is not satisfying the promise, nobody's going to go back there. So back to your question.
Yes.
Government will always have a problem if they don't polish their act. In other words, there must be something that appeals to the people about the genuineness of government as an entity. If you lie about it and you give them razzmatazz of advertising, you may succeed for a few months. It will still fail because the product is the government itself.
Okay. Let me ask you now, pointedly, government, the people, today's government, today's people, and everything in between economically that has happened. I will take you back to entertainment later, but what do you think is going on now with Nigerians regarding how they cope with the economic situation, vis-a-vis policy making and things like that?
Well, I don't think people are coping. It's a difficult period for everyone. Inflation is a beast because what it does is you can't even plan. I bought a loaf of bread for X amount yesterday, and I've planned, okay, next week if I need to buy bread again, I'll spend this on bread and other things, and then you go there, it's double the price.
Just like that.
So every other thing suffers because
the results.
Yeah. So people are not coping, and it's a tough period. I don't even know how people exist, particularly people of the lower earning income level. Many years ago, we had a friend of ours who was the first secretary in the Ghana embassy here, High Commission. And he used to tease us to say, you guys do everything we do in Ghana. I don't know what's the matter with you. We stage a coup, you stage a coup. We devaluate our currency, you devalue. What's the matter with you people? And he told me then, he says, even as first secretary, and I think he was next to the ambassador, if he bought petrol in his car and his wife's car, his salary was over. Back in Ghana. Here, we didn't have but petrol was still relatively cheap here because this was in the 80s. He said if he bought petrol in his car for himself and the car, he didn't have any more salary as a first secretary. So we said, so how do you cope? They say, everybody says Ghanaians are magicians. He said, no, we are crooks.
Now, what do they mean by we are crooks?
So sometimes I wonder how people get along now. Are people doing shady things to try and make ends meet?
Institutionalized behavior, corruption.
Yeah, so it's a difficult period for everybody. We can only hope that we're going through difficult times so that we can have an easier time at the end of it. Hopefully.
Light at the end of the tunnel?
Light at the end of the tunnel.
That gave me some food for thought. But I'm going to take you back to entertainment. advertising, broadcasting, entertainment, music, movie industry. And thanks to the likes of you, we know offsprings are beginning to carry the flag and banner in a way that everybody will be proud. But do you see a situation where Nigerians can survive on entertainment and their general creative energy without the effort of government?
Well, the effort of government is always important. The difference with governments in this part of the universe and in those other places, it's not as if those ones actually subvent what the creative people do. But they create infrastructure to make it easier for you to be able to operate.
So they enable the environment.
Yes. That's, I know, for instance, apart from actual cash which is given to theaters in Europe and America, in the UK, for instance, some part of their national lottery goes to theater for the development.
Which doesn't happen here.
It doesn't happen here. But beyond that, they create that enabling environment for business itself in general, and probably the entertainment as an offshoot of it. In other words, how easy is it for you to even get a loan for any kind of business in this environment as opposed to in those other places? And if you do, how much of that money goes, the way things are, for instance, now, I mean, I wonder what a young entrepreneur will feel. You borrow money to start a business, and to keep the power situation going, the diesel cost itself is enough to bankrupt people. I read in the papers some hospitals can't afford the cost of power and diesel, and they need to keep certain equipment on incubators for babies. Some medications have to be at a particular temperature always to be effective. And hospitals are not necessarily those massive teaching hospitals in big cities. What happened to some of the smaller hospitals in various places?
The way you're speaking now takes me back.
And of course, it's even more frightening. The cost of drugs have been the most affected entities in the whole inflation thing we have in this country at the moment, because most of our drugs are brought in anyway. So you have somebody who has to have a regular supply of drugs for some ailment which you have to manage. Maybe it's diabetes, maybe it's blood pressure. And then you can't afford what you could get for 2,000 naira before, probably is now 30,000. So it's almost like a death sentence.
It's scary because many hospitals in defense said they cannot operate successfully, so they have to charge. And the patient comes and said, treat me, then I'll pay you later. I said, no, you have to pay now, then I'll treat you. So in essence, there's no enabling environment for neither the patient nor the consultant doctor to survive, to even operate successfully. What do you advise?
No, I think we need to change our orientation towards business.
On whose point of view? From whose part, sir?
From the governmental standpoint.
Okay.
I mean, it cannot be an accident.
Yeah.
That when I entered advertising in '73, at least 80% of the companies that operated in this country are gone. It cannot be an accident. We are doing certain things wrong.
Terribly wrong.
80% from various industries, whether it's tires, whether it's textile, whether it's batteries. I mean, we had just about drugs.
Incidentally, this also kept the cycle of businesses for advertising to thrive.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
The only thing that was really coming in a massive manner over the years in terms of advertising and companies, the phone companies, the electronic companies. Besides that, just about every manufacturing company is gone.
It's gone. Cosmetics, all of those things, all gone. Wow. All right. Just before we conclude, I'm just going to ask you two final questions, but I'd like us to take a short break because I need to breathe. I need to breathe a bit. Right. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Yeah, so as we round off, just about 2-3 questions to just, encapsulate everything that has been said so far. But then we came to a crescendo when it talked about companies folding up. Scary. These same companies were part of the cycle of industry or industrialization that went on, especially with advertising that you played a role in. Why are these companies folding up? Let's really pointedly address that.
It's difficult to pinpoint. It may not be the same reason for every company, but they have certain things in common. And that's why we talk about the enabling environment for people to work. Some of them have complained in the past of double taxation. And I've read in the papers how new investors who want to come to the country are treated as if they're doing them a favor. They ask for all manner of things for them to be able to put a foot in the country. And the big monster, big C is also there. Let's face it, there is corruption in the country.
Big C, I like that.
So that is also a part of it.
Is that corruption that defies the rule of law? That's because we cannot just be corrupt and be kept, you're not even made to be transparent enough to account for your sins.
Yeah. Again, I think basically our system had gone wonky because a camel can easily pass through the needle's eye. How did they put it in the holy book? Anybody who's run any kind of business, and I, as a chief executive in the past, I can tell you, it's not easy to take a penny from the till. Because you hear bankers saying, these books are not balanced. It may be just 5 naira.
That's missing.
That is not, it is missing. It means something is wrong. Not to talk about 5,000, not to talk about 50,000, not to talk about 500,000, not to talk about 5 billion. And these things miss in our system, and nothing is triggered.
And nobody is held responsible.
Because the system doesn't even trigger that any money is out. I mean, there's something basically wrong. I also read sometimes that in the papers that when we do our audit, national audit, certain things, first of all, it doesn't look like we do national audit every year. I don't understand it. Whereas we make every company to do audit. But nationally, looks like we don't have an audit.
If you don't audit, how can you budget?
So, certain things, certain questions are asked by the auditors, Auditor General, which are not looked into, and just move on. It's totally ignored. So the system itself has made allowance for people to be able to get away with all manner of stuff. And if we are serious with ourselves, we need to do something about the system. I pity the EFCC people because it's like shutting the gate when the horse has escaped.
Escaped.
You know.
By the way you mentioned it, I was going to ask who will bail the cat.
Some reform has to be done. Again, I haven't run an organization myself. I know that people in the system, they know. They know when these things are going wrong.
But they turn a blind eye.
Yes, because they're not enabled to be able to do it. They're not laws to do. That's why you'll find, for instance, in some of these inquiries and investigations, say in the military, this head of this unit of the military has gone away with so much money. You'll find that his subordinate who runs the account is also helping himself. Because then he knows that Oga can't say anything.
So,
because he knows what Oga is doing.
Yes. Okay. Kemi Adetiba is your daughter. She's the producer director of King of Boys 1, 2. And when we talk about the Adetiba family, we cannot help but say there's an offspring somewhere. Kemi and Oscar, they're married. That I'm doing something that will make you proud. Well, it makes me very proud. How do you feel just knowing that you are grandfather, as it were, to the kind of industry that has wrestled its fate?
I got into one of the banks about a year ago or so, and the bank manager who knew me when I was chairman of Ikoyi Club,
yes,
he came, oh, please come and meet Mr. Adetiba, you know, because we had our accounts also in the bank. So he was trying to be very nice to me and all that. Called the staff, and they all jumped out. No, they knew nothing about me and whatever I've done. Oh, your Kemi's dad. They even wanted me to sign autograph as Kemi's dad.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's something that gives me so much emotional lift, particularly in an area of business which I have also dabbled in the creative business. The process is similar to making a film of 3 hours, making a commercial of 30 seconds.
Same effort.
Yes.
Same effort.
You have a script.
Yeah.
You have the post-production. You have the casting. You have location. So the creative process is basically the same. So I can further appreciate what she does. And sometimes when I read her script, I just marvel where it came from. Because more than anything else, people probably give her their claim as a director, which she is. But personally, from my background, the biggest thing about her is she's a fantastic storyteller, which comes from the script.
I wish we could go on and on with this kind of beautiful revelation. Well, Soni Irabor Live is always pleased to have the likes of Dele Adetiba, my mentor, by the way. You know, a lot of things I learned from him. I smuggled in the issue of our advertising experiences, and he had oh my God. He has confessed that he wasn't even paid, neither was I. So, but anyway, that was many years ago. Thank you so much, sir,
Welcome.
for sharing your experiences with us. And I wish you all the best. He just turned 80, by the way, so don't look at this one as if it's not that. He's 80-year-old handsome man. You want to know my age? Just count so many years behind, then you get to it. Thank you, sir. And once again, we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Soni.
So, Soni Irabor Live, signing off again. Next week is another date. Bye-bye.